bear cub was buried, neck deep in wet concrete. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The construction site stood silent under the dying light of dusk. Heavy machinery cast long shadows across piles of gravel and half-built structures. Marcus Reed wiped sweat from his forehead as he finished pouring the last section of concrete for the day. The wet mixture gleamed like silver in the fading sun, smooth and pristine. Nobody noticed the small brown bear cub watching from behind a stack of steel beams. Its mother had gone searching for food hours ago, leaving the curious youngster to explore on its own. The cub's nose twitched at the strange chemical smell. Its dark eyes followed Marcus as the man gathered his tools and headed to his truck. Inside a cottage just beyond the chain-link fence, baby Lily Chen played quietly on her blanket. At 14 months old, she had just learned to walk steadily. Her parents, David and Sarah, prepared dinner in the kitchen, the sounds of chopping vegetables mixing with soft radio music. Lily pressed her chubby hands against the cool window glass, watching the world outside with innocent fascination. The construction crew's trucks rumbled away one by one. Marcus glanced back at the site, satisfied with the day's work. The concrete would set overnight, ready for the next phase tomorrow. He drove off, leaving only the hum of distant traffic and chirping crickets. The bear cub emerged from its hiding spot. Its paws made soft padding sounds on the dirt as it approached the freshly poured concrete. The smooth surface reflected the pink-orange sky. The cub sniffed cautiously, then placed one paw on the edge. The mixture felt cool and strange. Lily giggled from her window perch. She had spotted movement outside, something small and furry. Her tiny fingers traced patterns on the glass as she watched the cub explore. Sarah called from the kitchen. "Dinner's almost ready, sweetheart." But Lily remained transfixed by the scene unfolding beyond the fence. The cub took another step forward. The concrete gave way slightly under its weight, creating ripples like disturbed water. Curious now, the young bear ventured further onto the surface. Its back paws still touched solid ground, but its front half pressed into the wet mixture. The concrete clung to its fur, gray against brown. A group of teenagers appeared from behind the equipment shed. They carried spray paint cans and laughed loudly, their voices cutting through the evening calm. Jake Sullivan led the group, his backwards cap shadowing his face. "Check it out," he called to his friends, pointing at the bear cub. "Little guys playing in the concrete." The cub tried to back away but found its paws stuck. Panic flickered in its eyes as it pulled harder. The concrete held firm, like thick mud that wouldn't let go. The teenagers moved closer, their laughter growing louder. One of them, Tyler Morris, pulled out his phone to record. Lily pressed her face against the window. Even at her young age, she sensed something was wrong. The bear looked scared. She patted the glass urgently, making small worried sounds. Her parents continued preparing dinner, unaware of the drama unfolding outside. The cub struggled more desperately now. Its front legs sank deeper into the concrete with each movement. The gray mixture reached its chest, holding it firmly in place. A frightened whimper escaped its throat, a sound that carried clearly to Lily's window. Jake picked up a small stone and tossed it near the trapped cub. "Bet it can't move now," he laughed. His friends joined in, finding the situation amusing. They had no idea how quickly wet concrete could harden, or how dangerous the situation was becoming. The cub's cries grew louder. Its small body trembled with effort and fear. The concrete continued to grip its fur, pulling it down slowly but surely. What had started as innocent curiosity was turning into a life-threatening trap. Lily's eyes filled with tears. She understood fear, even if she couldn't explain it. The small bear needed help, just like when she got stuck in her high chair and cried for her parents. Without thinking, she crawled backward off her window seat and toddled toward the back door. The cottage door stood slightly ajar, letting in the evening breeze. David had left it open after bringing in firewood earlier. Lily pushed against it with both hands, and it swung wide enough for her small body to squeeze through. Sarah noticed first. "David, where's Lily?" She glanced at the empty blanket, then spotted the open door. Her heart jumped. "She's outside." The parents rushed after their daughter, but Lily had already made surprising progress across the yard. Her determination drove her forward, tiny legs moving as fast as they could. The bear cub's cries pulled her like a magnet. The teenagers continued their cruel entertainment, now throwing small sticks that landed in the concrete around the trapped cub. They didn't notice the toddler approaching from the cottage, focused only on their victim. Night was falling fast. The construction site lights hadn't been turned on, leaving deepening shadows between the equipment. The cub had sunk to its neck now, only its head visible above the gray surface. Its struggles had weakened, exhaustion setting in. Lily reached the fence and grabbed the chain links with both hands. She could see the bear clearly now, so close yet separated by the barrier. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks as she watched it struggle. She had to help somehow. The baby found a gap where the fence didn't quite meet the ground. Construction workers had been meaning to fix it for weeks. She dropped to her hands and knees, crawling through the opening. Dirt and gravel scraped her palms, but she didn't stop. Jake finally noticed the movement. "Whoa, there's a baby here?" He pointed at Lily, who had emerged on the construction site side of the fence. His friends turned to look, momentarily forgetting about the trapped cub. Lily stood up, wobbling slightly on the uneven ground. She took careful steps toward the concrete, her eyes fixed on the bear cub. Its dark eyes met hers, two innocent creatures recognizing each other's distress. The parents reached the fence just as Lily cleared the gap. "Lily, no!" Sarah screamed, rattling the chain links. David searched frantically for another opening, his heart pounding with panic. Their baby was heading straight for wet concrete and a group of teenage strangers. But something remarkable happened in that moment. Lily's pure intention seemed to freeze everyone in place. The teenagers stopped laughing. The cub stopped struggling. Even the evening insects fell silent. The baby continued forward, drawn by an instinct older than words. She reached the edge of the concrete and sat down carefully, the way she did when playing with her toys. The trapped cub was just feet away, its eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. Lily extended one small hand toward it, making soft cooing sounds like she did with her stuffed animals at home. The scene hung suspended, a baby reaching for a bear cub, teenagers watching in confusion, parents gripping the fence in terror. The wet concrete continued its slow, hardening process, time ticking away for the trapped animal. And in that strange moment, something shifted in the air, as if the universe itself held its breath. Jake Sullivan stepped backward, his sneaker crunching on loose gravel. The sound broke the spell, but nobody moved to stop the baby. Something about Lily's complete lack of fear made them all pause. She was doing what none of them had considered, showing genuine care for the trapped animal. The bear cub's breathing had become shallow. Its neck stretched upward, trying to keep its nose above the concrete surface. Gray mixture clung to its fur in thick clumps. Each labored breath sent small ripples through the wet cement around its trapped body. The chemical smell of fresh concrete mixed with the wild scent of frightened animal. Lily scooted closer on her bottom, her pink dress gathering dust and dirt. She reached out again, this time her tiny fingers almost touching the cub's ear. The bear didn't pull away. Instead, it made a soft whimpering sound that seemed to echo Lily's own baby talk. Two young creatures, neither old enough to understand danger, connected across species in a moment of pure recognition. Tyler Morris lowered his phone, the recording forgotten. "Guys, we should do something," he said quietly. His voice carried a note of shame that hadn't been there minutes before. The other teenagers shuffled their feet, suddenly aware of how wrong their laughter had been. David Chen had found the main gate, but it was locked with a heavy padlock. He shook it frantically while Sarah pressed against the fence, calling Lily's name. Their daughter seemed oblivious to their panic, focused entirely on the bear cub. Sarah's mind raced through worst-case scenarios, the concrete hardening around her baby, the cub lashing out in fear, the teenagers doing something stupid. But Lily showed no fear. She babbled softly to the cub, the same nonsense sound she made to her stuffed animals during tea parties. Her small hand finally made contact with the bear's fur. It was softer than she expected, even with the concrete matted in it. The cub's eye rolled toward her, wide and dark and scared. Jake took a tentative step forward. "We need to get it out," he said, his earlier bravado completely gone. The reality of what they'd been laughing at hit him hard. This wasn't funny anymore. A baby animal was dying in front of them, and a human baby was trying to help while they stood around like idiots. The concrete had begun to set faster as the evening cooled. What had been liquid an hour ago was now thick like peanut butter. The cub's struggles had created a depression around its body, but the mixture held firm. Time was running out. Marcus Reed had used quickset concrete for this section, planning to speed up the project timeline. He had no idea his efficiency might cost a young bear its life. One of the teenagers, a girl named Ashley Parker, knelt beside Lily. "Hey, sweetie," she said gently. "We need to help your friend, okay?" Lily looked at her with solemn eyes, then pointed at the cub and made a sad sound. Ashley's heart clenched. How had they been laughing at this? David finally gave up on the gate. He backed up, preparing to climb the fence despite its height and barbed wire top. "I'm coming, Lily," he shouted. But before he could jump, another sound cut through the evening air, a deep, rumbling growl from the woods behind the construction site. Everyone froze. The teenagers' faces went pale. Even Lily paused in her babbling, turning toward the sound. From the darkening tree line, a massive shape emerged. The mother bear had returned, and she was not happy. She stood on her hind legs, towering nearly 7 feet tall. Her eyes swept the scene. Her cub trapped in concrete, surrounded by humans, one of them just a baby. The growl deepened, vibrating through the ground. This was a mother's worst nightmare, and her protective instincts kicked into overdrive. The teenagers scrambled backward, some running immediately. Jake stood his ground, but his legs shook. Ashley grabbed for Lily, trying to pull her away from danger. But the baby resisted, clinging to the trapped cub with surprising strength. She seemed to understand that leaving meant abandoning her new friend. The mother bear dropped to all fours and charged. The ground shook under her weight. Sarah screamed from behind the fence. David frantically searched for something to distract the bear. The teenagers scattered like leaves in wind, but Lily remained where she was, one hand on the cub, the other reaching toward the approaching mother. The bear skidded to a stop just feet from Lily, her massive head lowered, nostrils flaring as she smelled her cub's fear and the baby's scent. Everyone waited for the attack, for the protective mother to eliminate the perceived threat. but something in Lily's posture made the bear pause. The baby wasn't running. She wasn't screaming. She sat quietly, her touch gentle on the cub's head. When the mother bear looked into Lily's eyes, she saw no aggression, no threat, only the same concern she felt for her own young. Lily pointed at the trapped cub and made a soft whimpering sound, mimicking exactly what she'd heard from the baby bear. The mother circled slowly, her movements careful to avoid the wet concrete. She sniffed at her cub, who responded with desperate mewling. The situation was clear. Her baby was trapped, possibly dying, and these humans were responsible. But this smallest human seemed different. She was trying to comfort, not harm. Ashley had backed away, giving the bears space. She watched in amazement as Lily continued her gentle ministrations, seemingly unaware of the danger. The baby's parents clung to the fence, David's knuckles white with tension. They wanted to scream, to run, to grab their daughter, but they knew any sudden movement might trigger an attack. Jake found his courage in the strangest place, watching a baby show more bravery than he'd ever possessed. He stepped forward slowly, hands visible and empty. "We'll help," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We'll get your baby out." The mother bear's eyes shifted to him. Jake swallowed hard but didn't retreat. He looked around desperately for something, anything that might work. His eyes landed on a pile of construction tools near the mixing station. A pickaxe leaned against a wheelbarrow, its metal head glinting in the dying light. Moving with exaggerated care, Jake retrieved the tool. The mother bear watched every step, her muscles tensed for attack. But when Jake approached the concrete with obvious intent to help, she stepped back slightly. She understood tools. She'd seen humans use them before, usually to destroy. But this boy's body language suggested something different. Jake raised the pickaxe and brought it down carefully at the edge of the concrete, away from the cub. The hardened surface cracked slightly. He struck again, and a small chunk broke free. The work would be slow and dangerous, but it was possible. The mother bear huffed, a sound that might have been approval. Meanwhile, Lily had made a discovery. Her exploring fingers found where the concrete was still softest, right around the cub's front legs. She began pushing at it, her baby hands working to create space. The concrete gave way slightly under her touch, still wet enough to manipulate. She babbled excitedly at her success. Tyler and 2 other boys returned, carrying shovels and a bucket. They'd raided the tool shed, overcoming their fear to help. Ashley found a water hose and began spraying the edges of the concrete, trying to keep it from hardening further. The teenagers worked together now, their earlier cruelty transformed into desperate rescue efforts. The mother bear paced nervously but didn't interfere. She seemed to understand these humans were trying to help. Her eyes kept returning to Lily, who continued her gentle touches and soothing sounds. The baby's presence seemed to calm both bears, creating an island of peace in the chaos. Sarah had found her phone and called 911, but what could she tell them? "My baby is sitting between a trapped bear cub and its mother, and some teenagers are trying to dig them out with pickaxes." The dispatcher thought it was a prank, until Sarah's sobbing convinced otherwise. Animal control and emergency services were on their way, but they'd never arrive in time. The concrete around the cub's body had hardened considerably. Jake's pickaxe struck again and again, each blow carefully placed to avoid harming the animal. Chips flew, but progress was slow. The cub had stopped struggling, exhaustion and oxygen deprivation taking their toll. Its eyes began to close. Lily noticed immediately. She patted the cub's face gently, making distressed sounds. When that didn't work, she did something that shocked everyone. She leaned forward and blew softly on the cub's nose, the way her mother did when Lily was upset. The cub's eyes fluttered open, focusing on the baby's face. The mother bear moved closer, her massive form casting a shadow over both babies. Instead of threatening, she lowered her head and touched her nose to Lily's hair. The baby giggled, the sound incongruous in the tense situation. For a moment, the three of them, human baby, bear cub, and mother bear, formed a tableau of impossible connection. David had finally made it over the fence, tearing his hands on the barbed wire. He ran toward his daughter but stopped when the mother bear's head swiveled toward him. "It's okay," Ashley called out. "She's letting us help. Just move slowly." The father approached carefully, every instinct screaming at him to grab Lily and run. But he could see what everyone else saw. His daughter had somehow become the bridge between species, the key to saving the cub. He knelt beside her, ready to protect, but not interfering with the strange magic she'd created. Jake's arms burned from swinging the pickaxe, but he didn't stop. The concrete was breaking away in larger chunks now. Tyler and the others used their shovels to clear debris, creating a widening circle around the trapped cub. The hole was almost big enough to pull the small bear free, but they encountered a new problem. The cub's fur had bonded with the concrete in places. Pulling it out might tear its skin, cause serious injury. They needed a different approach. Ashley had an idea. She ran to the supply shed and returned with a bottle of motor oil, something the construction crew used for their equipment. "This might work," she said, pouring the oil carefully where fur met concrete. The slippery substance began breaking the bond, loosening the grip. The mother bear watched intently, understanding on some level that this was helping. She made a soft chuffing sound that might have been encouragement. Lily clapped her hands when she saw the oil working. She dipped her own small fingers in it and began rubbing around the cub's neck, her touch gentle but effective. The baby's instinctive understanding of how to help continued to amaze everyone watching. The sky had darkened to deep purple, the first stars appearing overhead. Work lights around the construction site flickered on automatically, bathing the scene in harsh white light. The concrete pit looked like a spotlight stage where an improbable drama played out. Teenagers, a baby, and two bears working together for a rescue. Sarah had climbed the fence too, no longer able to watch from afar. She approached slowly, hands visible, until she could kneel beside her husband. Together, they flanked their daughter, ready to snatch her away if the mother bear showed any sign of aggression. But the bear seemed to accept their presence, focused entirely on her trapped cub. The hole was finally large enough. Jake set down the pickaxe, his hands blistered and raw. "Okay," he panted. "Let's try to lift it out." Several teenagers positioned themselves around the hole. On the count of 3, they reached in together, grasping the cub wherever they could get a hold. The mother bear tensed but didn't attack. She understood they were trying to help. 1, 2, 3. They pulled together. The cub came partway up, but the concrete still held its hind legs. They eased it back down, afraid of causing injury. Lily had been watching intently. Now she crawled forward on her hands and knees, right to the edge of the hole. Before anyone could stop her, she reached down into the wet concrete, her entire arm disappearing into the gray mixture. Her tiny fingers found the cub's back paw, still stuck in a pocket of hardened cement. With her free hand, she grabbed the oil bottle Ashley had left nearby. The baby's problem-solving abilities stunned everyone. She poured oil directly where her fingers told her the concrete was hardest. Then she wiggled the cub's paw gently, working it loose like she did with her toys when they got stuck. "She's got it!" Tyler exclaimed. He could feel the difference in resistance. "Try again." This time, when they pulled, the cub came free. It emerged covered in gray concrete and oil, looking more like a statue than a living creature. But it was breathing, and it was alive. The teenagers laid it gently on the ground beside the hole. The mother bear rushed forward, nearly bowling Lily over in her haste. She sniffed her cub all over, licked at its face, tried to clean the concrete from its fur. The cub responded weakly, exhausted but conscious. It would live. Lily sat back, her dress ruined, her arms covered in concrete up to her elbows. She watched the bear reunion with satisfaction, clapping her hands despite the gray gloves of hardened cement. When the mother bear looked at her again, Lily reached out one concrete-covered hand. In a moment that defied all natural law, the massive bear leaned down and touched her nose to Lily's palm. The baby giggled, delighted by the wet touch. Then the mother gently picked up her cub by the scruff of its neck and began walking toward the forest. But after just a few steps, she stopped. The cub was heavier than it should be, weighed down by concrete still clinging to its body. She set it down carefully and looked back at the humans. Her eyes held an intelligence that made everyone pause. This wasn't over. The mother bear did something unprecedented. She picked up her cub again and carried it back toward the group. She laid it at Lily's feet, then sat down heavily, as if the weight of the decision exhausted her. The message was clear. She needed more help. Ashley understood first. "She wants us to clean the concrete off completely," she said softly. "It's too heavy for the cub to walk properly." The teenagers sprang into action with renewed purpose. Someone found a large tarp and spread it on the ground. They eased the cub onto it, the mother watching every movement. Tyler ran to his truck and returned with bottles of water from a case in the back. Ashley grabbed rags from the supply shed. David and Sarah exchanged glances over their daughter's head. Their baby had created this impossible situation where wild bears trusted humans, where cruel teenagers became rescuers. They could have grabbed Lily and left, but something held them there. Their daughter was part of something larger than their fears. Lily crawled onto the tarp beside the cub, patting its head while the others worked. She babbled constantly, her voice seeming to calm both bears. The mother lay down nearby, her massive form relaxed but alert. Occasionally she would huff or grunt, sounds that seemed directed at her cub or Lily. Jake knelt beside the cub with a water bottle and rag. His hands, blistered from the pickaxe, shook slightly as he began cleaning concrete from the matted fur. The substance had hardened in clumps, pulling at the skin underneath. He worked carefully, memories of his own cruelty just minutes ago burning in his mind. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the cub, though he knew it couldn't understand. "I'm so sorry." The cleaning process was slow and delicate. Motor oil helped loosen the worst spots, but some concrete seemed permanently bonded to the fur. Ashley found scissors in the first aid kit and began carefully cutting away the worst matted sections. The cub would have bald patches, but it would heal. While they worked, Lily made an extraordinary discovery. She had been playing with the cub's ear, running her concrete-covered fingers along its edge, when she noticed something. Where her cement-covered hand touched the cub's concrete-matted fur, the hardened substance seemed to soften slightly. She pressed harder, and the concrete under her touch became almost pliable. The baby looked at her hand in wonder, then at the cub's fur. With the logic only a toddler possesses, she began rubbing her concrete-covered palms all over the cub's affected areas. "Look at that," Tyler breathed. Wherever Lily touched, the concrete became easier to remove. It made no scientific sense. Concrete didn't work that way, but they could all see it happening. The baby's touch was somehow reversing the chemical process. Sarah, a chemistry teacher at the local high school, watched in disbelief. "That's impossible," she murmured. But impossible things had been happening all evening. She thought about skin oils, body temperature, the unique chemistry of a baby's touch. Perhaps there was a scientific explanation, or perhaps some things transcended science. The mother bear had noticed too. She rose and padded closer, watching Lily's hands work their strange magic. The baby looked up at the massive predator and smiled, showing her few tiny teeth. The bear huffed softly, a sound almost like laughter. As Lily continued her work, the teenagers cleaned more efficiently behind her. What had seemed permanent was coming free. The cub began to look more like a bear and less like a concrete sculpture. It even managed to lift its head and lick Lily's face, making her squeal with delight. But then, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The emergency vehicles Sarah had called were finally arriving. The mother bear's head snapped up, her relaxed posture instantly shifting to high alert. She knew that sound meant more humans, possibly danger. Red and blue lights flashed through the construction site as police cars and an animal control van pulled up to the gate. Officers emerged with weapons drawn, standard procedure for a bear encounter. They saw the scene through the fence. Civilians surrounded by bears, a baby in the middle of it all. "Everyone stay calm," an officer shouted through a megaphone. "Move away from the animals slowly." But how could they explain? How could they convey that these bears weren't a threat, that leaving now would mean abandoning the still weak cub? The mother bear had risen to her feet, positioning herself between her cub and the new arrivals. Her cooperation dissolved in the face of perceived danger. Lily sensed the change immediately. She felt the tension in the air, saw the fear returning to the mother bear's eyes. The baby did the only thing she knew. She crawled forward and hugged the mother bear's massive leg. The sight stopped everyone cold. A tiny human baby, covered in concrete and dirt, clinging to a wild bear like it was a beloved family pet. The officers lowered their weapons slightly, confusion replacing trained response. The animal control officer, Dr. Ellen Martinez, had seen many things in her 20-year career, but this scene defied all her experience. She approached the fence slowly, taking in every detail: the hole in the concrete, the oil bottles, the teenagers with dirty hands, the baby between two bears. "What happened here?" she asked, her voice calm but incredulous. David found his voice. "Our daughter. She helped save a bear cub that was trapped. The mother bear, she understands. She's letting us help." Dr. Martinez studied the scene more carefully. The cub was clearly recovering from trauma, but seemed stable. The mother bear, despite her defensive posture, wasn't showing true aggression. And the baby was the key to it all. "I need everyone to stay exactly where they are," Dr. Martinez said. She returned to her van and came back with a tranquilizer gun. The sight of it made the mother bear growl, the sound reverberating through the construction site. "No!" Ashley cried out. "You don't understand. She's not dangerous. She trusted us." But Lily had already taken action. The baby crawled directly in front of the mother bear, spreading her small arms wide as if she could shield the massive animal. She made fierce baby sounds, her own version of a growl. The message was clear: "You'll have to go through me." The absurdity of it, a toddler protecting a 400-pound bear, made several people laugh despite the tension. Even some officers cracked smiles. Dr. Martinez lowered her tranquilizer gun, reassessing the situation. "All right," she said finally. "Let's try this differently. How close is the cub to being fully cleaned?" Jake wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a concrete smear. "Maybe 10 more minutes. The baby, Lily, She's doing something that makes the concrete come off easier. Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow but didn't comment on the impossibility. She'd seen animals respond to children in unexpected ways before, though nothing quite like this. 10 minutes, she announced to the other officers. Let them finish. We'll monitor from here. The cleaning resumed with renewed urgency. Lily continued her mysterious work, her concrete-covered hands somehow softening the hardened patches. The teenagers worked behind her, removing loosened chunks and matted fur. The pile of gray debris grew beside the tarp. The mother bear had settled again, though she kept watchful eyes on the officers. Occasionally, she would nose at her cub, checking its progress. The cub was more alert now, even attempting to groom itself in the way bears do. Sarah knelt beside her daughter, finally close enough to check her over. Lily seemed unharmed aside from being filthy. Concrete clung to her arms and hands, but she showed no distress. If anything, she seemed happier than Sarah had ever seen her, completely in her element despite the bizarre circumstances. As they worked, Jake began to talk. Maybe it was guilt, maybe the strangeness of the moment, but words poured out. "We come here sometimes," he said, not looking at anyone in particular. "To tag the equipment, break things, we thought we were cool." His friends nodded, shame coloring their faces. They'd been coming to construction sites for months, vandalizing property, leaving their mark. Tonight, they'd planned to spray paint the new concrete, leave gang signs that would be permanent once it dried. "We saw the bear get stuck and we laughed," Tyler added, his voice thick with guilt. "We actually laughed at it." Ashley had tears running down her cheeks. If Lily hadn't come out, if she hadn't shown us. She couldn't finish the sentence. They all knew what would have happened. The cub would have died in the concrete, maybe been found days later by the construction crew. The confession hung in the air. David and Sarah listened without comment, focused on their daughter. The officers heard everything, evidence of vandalism and criminal mischief. But in this moment, facing the strange miracle of interspecies cooperation, legal consequences seemed less important than moral ones. The final patches of concrete came free. The cub, now recognizable as a young bear despite some bald spots, struggled to its feet. It was weak but mobile, swaying slightly as it found its balance. Lily clapped her hands, concrete flaking off with the movement. The mother bear rose and nosed her cub all over, checking every inch. Satisfied with what she found, she gently grabbed it by the scruff again. But before leaving, she did something that made everyone gasp. She approached Lily one more time and, with infinite gentleness, licked the baby's face. Her rough tongue removed some of the dirt and concrete dust, a grooming gesture bears reserved for their own cubs. Lily giggled and patted the bear's nose, unaware of the significance. Then the mother picked up her cub and walked toward the forest. She paused once at the tree line, looking back. Her eyes swept over everyone, the teenagers who'd learned compassion, the parents who'd faced their worst fears, the baby who'd bridged two worlds. A soft huff, almost like a thank you, and she disappeared into the darkness. The construction site fell silent, except for Lily's happy babbling. She tried to follow the bears, but David scooped her up, holding her tight despite the concrete covering her. Sarah wrapped her arms around both of them, her body shaking with released tension. The teenagers stood in a group, unsure what to do next. They'd participated in something extraordinary, but they'd also confessed to crimes. Jake stepped forward, addressing Dr. Martinez and the officers. "We'll pay for any damage we've caused," he said. "Community service, whatever you think is right, but please, could you not press charges tonight? We need to—" He gestured helplessly at the scene. "We need to process what just happened." Officer Reynolds, who'd been first on scene, looked at his colleagues. They'd all witnessed the same impossible events. A baby had saved a bear cub, turned vandals into heroes, created peace between species that should have been in conflict. "We'll need statements from everyone," he said finally. "And yes, there will be consequences for the vandalism, but tonight maybe we all learned something about second chances." As the group began to disperse, Lily pointed toward the forest and made her growling sound again. She clearly wanted to follow her new friends. Sarah laughed through her tears, kissing her daughter's concrete-covered cheek. "They'll be okay, sweetie. You made sure of that." The baby seemed to understand. She laid her head on David's shoulder, exhausted from her adventure. As they walked toward their car, flanked by officers and watched by chastened teenagers, concrete began flaking off Lily's hands. Underneath, her skin was unmarked, as if the substance had never touched her at all. Behind them, the construction site bore witness to the night's events. A hole in fresh concrete, scattered tools, oil stains, and water puddles. By morning, Marcus Reed would arrive to find his perfect pour ruined. But he'd also find something else, a tiny handprint in the concrete at the edge of the hole, perfectly preserved. A baby's mark that would last as long as the building stood. In the forest, the mother bear found a stream. She washed her cub carefully, removing the last traces of its ordeal. The young bear would heal, would grow strong, would someday have cubs of its own. And perhaps, in whatever way bears remember things, it would carry the memory of a tiny human who'd shown that kindness knows no species. The police reports filed that night would be unlike any before them. They spoke of interspecies communication, of unexplained chemical reactions, of a baby who'd done what trained professionals couldn't. The reports would be filed away, officially closed but never forgotten by those who'd witnessed them. Jake Sullivan would return to the construction site the next week with his friends, not to vandalize but to volunteer. They'd approach Marcus Reed, offer to help repair the damage, learn legitimate construction skills. Their nights of destructive rebellion had ended with a baby's touch and a bear's trust. Dr. Martinez would spend hours researching, trying to understand what she'd seen. She'd test theories about human pheromones, about the unique properties of infant skin, about the electromagnetic fields generated by young mammals. But the scientific explanations would always fall short of the wonders she'd witnessed. The Chen family would return home to find neighbors gathered, drawn by the sirens and commotion. The story would spread through the community like wildfire, growing and changing with each telling. But those who'd been there would know the truth was stranger than any embellishment. As Lily slept that night, cleaned and pajama-clad in her crib, she dreamed of soft fur and gentle eyes. Her parents stood watching, marveling at their daughter who'd shown them that courage comes in the smallest packages, that compassion needs no words, that sometimes the most profound connections happen between the most unlikely friends. The concrete handprint would weather years of rain and snow, becoming a local landmark. Construction workers would pause their lunch breaks to touch it for luck. Children would place their own hands against it, measuring their growth. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, people swore they could see large paw prints beside it in the dust, as if something wild had come to visit an old friend. But that's not where this story ends. Because 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Sarah Chen would open their back door to get the newspaper. There, on the porch, impossibly, she'd find 2 objects: a small clump of concrete with baby handprints preserved in it, and beside it, a tuft of brown fur tied with what looked like grass. Sarah's hands trembled as she picked up the objects. The concrete piece was smooth, polished as if by careful hands or paws. The fur was soft, clearly from a young bear, tied with sweet grass in a pattern that looked almost deliberate. She called David, her voice barely above a whisper. They remembered, she breathed, showing him the gifts. The bears remembered. But that morning would bring more than mysterious gifts. As Sarah stood on the porch, movement in the garden caught her eye. Behind the rose bushes, partially hidden by autumn foliage, sat the mother bear. She wasn't alone. Beside her, the cub, now healed and healthy, played with fallen leaves. David grabbed Sarah's arm, ready to pull her inside. But the mother bear made no aggressive moves. She simply sat, watching the house with those intelligent eyes. The cub noticed the humans and bounded forward a few steps before its mother gently called it back with a soft grunt. From upstairs came the sound of Lily waking, happy baby noises, and the rattle of crib bars. The mother bear's ears perked at the familiar sound. She rose slowly, nosing her cub toward the forest edge. But before leaving, she did something extraordinary. The massive bear approached the porch, each step deliberate and unthreatening. David and Sarah stood frozen, clutching each other. The bear climbed the steps, wood creaking under her weight, and placed something carefully beside the other gifts. Then she retreated, collected her cub, and vanished into the woods. Sarah knelt to examine the new object. It was a honeycomb, thick with golden honey, wrapped in large maple leaves. Tears ran down her cheeks as she understood. The bear had brought food for Lily, the highest honor in Ursine culture. That evening, after putting Lily to bed, the parents sat discussing the morning's events. They'd told no one, knowing how insane it would sound. But they couldn't ignore what was happening. The bears weren't just visiting, they were establishing something deeper. The next week brought a cold snap, the first real bite of winter. David was winterizing the garden when he noticed tracks in the frost. Bear prints circled the house, always pausing longest beneath Lily's window. Some mornings, they'd find small offerings. Perfect pine cones, unusual stones, once a blue jay feather tied with grass. Lily had noticed too. She'd stand at her window for hours, pointing and babbling at the garden. Sometimes Sarah caught her making that peculiar growling sound she'd learned that night at the construction site. And sometimes, impossibly, they'd hear an answering call from the forest. The story might have remained their private miracle, but fate had other plans. On a bitter November morning, everything changed again. Jake Sullivan had kept his promise. Every weekend, he and his friends worked at various construction sites, learning legitimate skills from patient foremen. The vandal had become a builder. That morning, he was helping frame a house near the Chen's neighborhood when screams split the air. A toddler had wandered into traffic on the main road. Cars swerved, brakes squealed, but one truck couldn't stop in time. The child's mother stood frozen in horror as death approached on 18 wheels. From the woods burst the mother bear. She moved faster than seemed possible for her size, placing herself between the truck and the child. The impact was tremendous. The bear took the full force, her body protecting the toddler completely. She rolled aside as the truck finally stopped, the child miraculously untouched beneath her. Jake arrived just as the bear struggled to rise. Blood matted her fur, her breathing labored. The truck driver sat in shock while the child's mother scooped up her baby, sobbing with relief. But Jake's attention fixed on the injured bear. He knew those eyes, that distinctive scar on her muzzle from some old wound. "It's her," he whispered. "The bear from the construction site." People gathered quickly, some with phones already calling 911. But Jake pushed through them, kneeling beside the bear despite warnings to stay back. Her eyes found his, recognition flickering in their depths. "You saved another one," Jake said softly, "just like Lily saved yours." The bear tried to rise again, but collapsed. Internal injuries, Jake realized with growing dread. She was dying. Her head turned toward the forest, a low moan escaping her throat. Jake understood. She was calling her cub. The young bear appeared at the forest edge, hesitant and afraid. Its mother's cries grew more urgent. Jake made a decision that would have seemed insane months ago. He stood and walked slowly toward the cub, hands visible and movements calm. "It's okay," he said, using the same tone he'd heard Lily use. "Come to her. She needs you." Whether the cub recognized him from that night or simply trusted his intent, it crept forward. Jake stepped aside as the young bear reached its mother. The reunion was heartbreaking, the cub nuzzling frantically while its mother's strength faded. Sirens approached. Animal control, ambulances, police. The same cacophony as that night months ago. But this time was different. The mother bear wasn't getting up. Her breathing grew shallower as her cub whimpered beside her. Dr. Martinez arrived, took in the scene with professional eyes. She knelt beside the bear, checking vitals, assessing damage. Her face told the story before her words. "She's not going to make it," she said quietly. "Too much internal trauma." The crowd murmured with sadness. Even those afraid of bears recognized the nobility of her sacrifice. The child she'd saved clutched his mother, both of them crying. The truck driver stood nearby, devastated despite it not being his fault. Jake had an idea. He pulled out his phone, dialing quickly. "Mrs. Chen, it's Jake Sullivan. You need to bring Lily, now, please." He gave the address, urgency cutting through questions. While they waited, Dr. Martinez did what she could to ease the bear's pain. The cub stayed close, occasionally licking its mother's face, trying to rouse her. The Chens arrived in minutes, Lily in David's arms. The toddler took in the scene, the crowd, the injured bear, the frightened cub. Without hesitation, she squirmed to be put down. David reluctantly lowered her to the ground. Lily toddled through the crowd, people parting before her like waves. She reached the dying bear and sat down, patting the massive head with those same gentle hands. The bear's eyes opened, focusing with effort on the tiny human. "Bear," Lily said clearly, her first real word beyond Mama and Dada. "Good bear." The mother bear's breathing eased. She looked from Lily to her cub, then back again. With tremendous effort, she lifted her head and touched her nose to Lily's cheek. Then she turned to her cub, making soft sounds Jake recognized as instructions, final lessons from mother to child. Lily seemed to understand something the adults couldn't. She reached for the cub, drawing it closer. The young bear came willingly, pressing against the baby's side. Together they flanked the dying mother, one last moment of the impossible bond that had begun with concrete and fear. The end came peacefully. The mother bear's eyes stayed on Lily and her cub until they closed for the final time. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, November wind stilling in respect. The cub keened, a sound of pure loss that brought tears to hardened eyes. But Lily wrapped her small arms around it, holding tight. The cub buried its face in her shoulder, seeking comfort as only the very young can give and receive. "What do we do now?" someone asked. Dr. Martinez stood slowly. "By law, the cub should go to a wildlife rehabilitation center. It's too young to survive alone." But even as she spoke, everyone could see the problem. The cub clung to Lily as desperately as Lily held it. Separating them might harm both. The bond forged in concrete had deepened beyond human understanding. Sarah knelt beside her daughter. "Lily, honey, the baby bear needs help, special doctors for animals." Lily looked at her mother with solemn eyes. "My bear," she said firmly, a second word emerging from crisis. Help my bear. The crowd wrestled with the dilemma. Law said one thing, but they'd all witnessed something beyond legal frameworks. The truck driver stepped forward, tears on his weathered face. "I've got 40 acres outside town," he said. "Woods, a stream, plenty of space. If there's a way to let them stay together while the cub grows." Dr. Martinez considered. "It's unprecedented, but then, so is a bear dying to save a human child. So is a toddler who can calm wild animals." She looked at the Chens. "Would you be willing to work with us? Daily visits while we monitor the cub? Teaching it to be wild while maintaining this connection?" David and Sarah exchanged glances. Their normal life had ended the night Lily crawled under a fence. This was just the next chapter in their strange new reality. "Yes," Sarah said. "Whatever's best for them both." The logistics took hours to arrange. The mother bear's body would be handled with respect, her sacrifice honored. The cub would go to a specially modified enclosure on the truck driver's property, wild space with human access. The Chens would visit daily, Lily maintaining the contact that seemed vital to the cub's well-being. As they prepared to transport the cub, it refused to leave Lily. Finally, they all rode together, the Chen's car leading, the animal control van following with Lily and the cub in the back, Dr. Martinez monitoring both. The property was perfect. Woods opened onto meadows. A stream babbled through rocky channels. The enclosure was large enough for a growing bear, but secure enough for safety. The cub explored tentatively, always returning to Lily's side. That night established the pattern for months to come. The Chens would visit every evening, Lily playing with the cub as it grew. Dr. Martinez taught them about bear behavior, diet, development. The cub learned to fish in the stream, to forage for berries, to be a bear. But it also learned to be Lily's friend, their bond deepening with each passing day. Jake and his friends became regular visitors too. They built shelters, hauled food, helped maintain the enclosure. The Vandals had become conservationists, their lives redirected by a single night of unexpected grace. News of the arrangement spread despite attempts at privacy. Reporters came seeking the story of the girl who befriended bears, but the Chens refused interviews, protecting their daughter's childhood and the cub's development. Only those directly involved knew the full truth. Winter deepened. The cub, now significantly larger, should have been hibernating. Instead, it remained active, waiting for Lily's daily visits. They played in the snow, the bear gentle despite its growing strength. It learned words, not speaking them, but understanding when Lily chattered about her day. On Lily's second birthday, they held a small party at the enclosure. The cub, hardly a cub anymore, wore a ribbon Sarah had tied around its neck. It sat patiently while Lily opened presents, then surprised everyone by pushing forward its own offering, a perfect bird's nest, carefully carried in its mouth. "Bear present," Lily squealed, hugging her friend. The bear huffed happily, the sound so like laughter that the adults joined in. But nature has its own timeline. As spring arrived, Dr. Martinez noticed changes in the bear's behavior. It was maturing, instincts awakening that no amount of human contact could suppress. The time was coming when it would need true freedom. The decision wasn't easy. Lily was old enough now to understand loss, to feel the pain of separation. But keeping the bear confined as it grew would be cruel. They needed a solution that honored both the wild and the miraculous bond. The truck driver, Bill Thompson, who'd never forgiven himself for the accident despite its inevitability, offered his entire property. "Make it a private reserve," he said. "I'll deed it to conservation. The bear can roam free but stay close. Lily can visit, but the bear can be wild. Legal complexities took months to resolve. But eventually, the enclosure gates opened permanently. The bear was free to go wherever it wished. Everyone expected it to vanish into the deep woods, following its true nature. Instead, it built a den near the stream, close enough to see the main house. Every evening, it would appear at the forest edge, waiting. When the Chen's car arrived, it would bound forward, greeting Lily with obvious joy. They'd play for hours, the bear teaching Lily to fish, Lily reading it picture books, both of them napping together in sunny meadows. Years passed this way. Lily started school, made human friends, lived a normal life in most ways. But every evening she'd return to the reserve, to her first friend who taught her that love transcends species. The bear grew magnificent, a massive male who should have been territorial and solitary. But it remained gentle with Lily, protective of the property, tolerant of the humans who shared its space. Other bears occasionally passed through, and it would interact with them normally. But it always returned to wait for a little girl who'd saved its life with concrete-covered hands. On Lily's 7th birthday, something unexpected happened. The bear didn't come alone. Beside it walked a female bear, smaller and clearly nervous. Behind her tumbled 2 cubs, exact miniatures of their father. "Babies," Lily gasped. "You have babies." The male bear huffed proudly, gently herding his cubs forward. They approached Lily cautiously, sniffing and curious. Their mother watched warily, but the father's calm presence reassured her. Soon the cubs were tumbling over Lily, playing as their father once had. Sarah wiped away tears as she watched. The cycle was complete, from a dying cub in concrete to a father bringing his own cubs to meet his human sister. The impossible had become beautifully ordinary. Jake Sullivan, now a successful contractor, stood beside her. He visited regularly, part of the extended family this strange miracle had created. "She's going to do something amazing with her life," he said, watching Lily wrestle gently with bear cubs. "Someone who can bridge worlds like this, she'll change everything." As sunset painted the sky orange and pink, they prepared to leave. The bears would return to the forest, the humans to their house. But tomorrow they'd meet again, as they had for years, as they would for years to come. Lily hugged each bear goodbye, the cubs, their mother, and finally her first friend. The massive bear lowered its head, letting her kiss its nose. Then it did something new. It placed one huge paw on her shoulder, the gesture unmistakably protective, undeniably loving. "See you tomorrow," Lily whispered. The bear huffed agreement, then led its family back to the woods. They paused at the tree line, 5 shapes silhouetted against the dying light. The male turned back once, eyes finding Lily's, holding a moment of perfect understanding. Then they vanished into the forest, wild things returning to wildness, but forever connected to a girl who'd shown them that miracles sometimes come in the smallest packages. That night, as Lily slept, she dreamed of running through forests on 4 legs, of fishing in crystal streams, of raising cubs in hidden dens. Somewhere in the woods, a bear dozed and perhaps dreamed of walking on 2 legs, of reading picture books, of birthday parties with ribbons and laughter. 2 worlds, touched and forever changed, proving that love needs no common language, that courage comes in all sizes, that sometimes the most profound connections happen between the most unlikely friends. The concrete handprint at the construction site remained, weathered but clear. Beside it, someone had installed a bronze plaque, "Where humanity met wildness," and both were forever changed. But those who knew the real story understood the truth was far stranger and more wonderful than any monument could capture. 20 years later, Dr. Lily Chen stood before the United Nations Environmental Council, her presentation nearly complete. Behind her, massive screens showed images that had captivated the world. Bears and humans working together in ways science couldn't fully explain. The Chen Reserve model, she explained, her voice carrying the authority of 2 decades' work, has now been replicated in 47 locations across 6 continents. Human-wildlife conflict has decreased by 80% in these areas. Poaching has virtually disappeared. And the bears... She paused, smiling at memories. The bears have taught us that consciousness, empathy, and love extend far beyond our own species. In the audience, Jake Sullivan watched with pride. His construction company had built half the reserves, using techniques that merged human needs with wildlife habitats. Beside him sat Dr. Ellen Martinez, now head of the International Wildlife Communication Institute, an organization that existed because of one impossible night long ago. Lily clicked to her final slide, a recent photo that had gone viral worldwide. It showed her 2 children, ages 3 and 5, playing with a group of bear cubs while adult bears watched calmly nearby. The image that should have been terrifying was instead filled with joy and trust. My children represent the 3rd generation of human-bear cooperation, Lily continued. They're growing up in a world where the impossible has become normal, where the barriers between species are bridges instead of walls. She didn't mention that one of those cubs was the grandchild of her first bear friend, or that the massive elder bear still waited for her every evening, now silver-muzzled but still gentle. Some miracles were too personal for public consumption. As she concluded her presentation, delegates rose in unanimous applause. The Chen Protocol would be adopted globally, forever changing how humans interacted with wildlife. But for Lily, the real victory was smaller and infinitely more precious. That evening, she returned to the reserve with her children. As their car pulled up, bears emerged from the forest, 3 generations now, all connected by an unbroken chain of trust that began with a baby's concrete-covered hands. Her daughter, Emma, ran forward fearlessly. "Grandpa Bear," she called to the eldest, who lowered his massive head for her embrace. Lily's son, David Jr., toddled after, still learning to walk, but already fluent in the subtle language of Ursine communication. Lily's own parents, now in their 70s, sat on the porch watching. Sarah had documented everything over the years, her journals becoming the foundation for a new field of study. David had become the reserve's guardian, ensuring the space remained protected for all who needed it. As the sun set, casting golden light through the trees, Lily found herself at the spot where it all began. A small clearing where a mother bear had brought her injured cub 20 years ago. The original shelter Jake had built still stood, weathered but solid, a monument to transformation. The elder bear padded up beside her, sitting with a heavy sigh of age. His cubs and grandcubs played nearby, but his attention fixed on Lily. She leaned against his warm bulk, feeling the steady heartbeat that had comforted her since childhood. "We did it, old friend," she whispered. "We really did it." The bear rumbled deep in his chest, a sound she'd learned meant contentment. His massive paw settled gently on her shoulder, the same gesture he'd made years ago, but now carrying the weight of a lifetime's bond. In the distance, her children laughed with bear cubs, creating new memories, forging new connections. The reservation stretched for thousands of acres now, home to dozens of bears who chose to stay close to their human partners. Scientists came from around the world to study the phenomenon, but they always left understanding less than when they arrived. Because some things couldn't be measured or quantified, the love between a girl and a bear, the trust that transcended species, the miracle that began with a baby's compassion and grew into a global movement. As stars appeared overhead, the families, human and ursine, gathered in the clearing. It was honey cake night, a tradition Emma had started. Lily distributed treats while bears and children mingled freely, all boundaries dissolved in the simple joy of being together. Her phone buzzed with messages. Congratulations on the UN presentation, requests for interviews, invitations to speak at conferences. Tomorrow she'd return to that world, spreading the message, changing minds, building bridges. But tonight belonged to older truths. The elder bear's eyes met hers across the clearing. In them she saw their entire history, the frightened cub in concrete, the grieving orphan, the young bear learning to fish, the proud father, the gentle grandfather. Most of all, she saw the friend who'd taught her that love recognizes no boundaries. A shooting star traced across the sky. Emma pointed excitedly, making a wish. But Lily didn't wish for anything. Everything she'd ever wanted sat in this clearing. Her children playing with bears, her parents smiling with pride, her first friend still by her side. Later, as they prepared to leave, the bears performed their nightly ritual. They lined up at the forest edge, cubs, mothers, fathers, and the Grand Patriarch. One by one, each bear touched noses with each human, a formal goodbye that promised tomorrow's reunion. The elder bear went last. He pressed his graying muzzle against Lily's cheek, breathing in her scent as he'd done for 20 years. Then he turned to Emma and David Jr., nuzzling each child gently. The gesture spoke of protection, affection, and continuity. A promise that this bond would outlive them all. As the Chen family drove away, Lily watched in the mirror as the bears faded into darkness. But she knew they'd be there tomorrow, as they'd been every day of her life since that fateful night. The impossible had become inevitable, the miraculous had become mundane, and the world was infinitely richer for it. Back at the construction site, the bronze plaque gleamed in moonlight. But the real monument wasn't metal or stone. It lived in every child who grew up believing in magic, in every bear who chose trust over fear, in every heart that understood that love speaks a universal language. The security camera at the construction site, upgraded many times over the years, captured one final image that night. A massive bear, silver-muzzled and ancient, standing before the preserved handprint. He placed his own paw beside it, giant next to tiny, wild next to human, present next to past. For a long moment, the bear studied the comparison. Then he huffed once, a sound that might have been memory, might have been gratitude, might have been promise. He turned and padded back toward the forest, back toward tomorrow, back toward a future where girls and bears could be family. The camera recorded his departure, but it couldn't capture the truth of that moment. How do you film love? How do you document grace? How do you measure a miracle that started with a baby's touch and echoed through generations? You don't. You simply live it, day by day, bear by human, heart by heart. You let the impossible become possible. Let the strange become sacred. Let love bridge every gap that fear would build. And somewhere in the forest, 3 generations of bears settled into sleep, dreaming perhaps of a little girl with concrete-covered hands who'd shown them that kindness knows no species, that family extends beyond blood, that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion can reshape the world.